Well, hello everybody, welcome. As you can see, there's a bit of a mess here. So, what is going on? To begin with, my 4U TrueNAS 0DB fully silent server is not really fully silent. Initially, I designed it around running with SSDs, and the thermal dissipation calculations that I did were spot on, meaning that as I run Rust spinning disks, the server overheats during summer. It doesn't shut down, but the thermal throttles a lot and I get some alerts sometimes. So I've been running the fans on as I installed a while back the fan controller, the manual fan controller. But these fans are really bad and they are loud. I have a Noctua chassis fan cooling the CPU and it's barely audible, but the CPUs behind the hard drive cages are very loud. Meaning that I will buy some Noctuas tomorrow and replace them and put the server up and running. So for now I've moved my email to AWS and the other services are pointing to a static page. Another thing going on here is that I do intend to move this setup to my office. My girlfriend is a bit sick of this mess here, so I'll move it over and prepare my setup for actually having redundant power, redundant switches, and redundant router. I also intend to, I'm waiting for, here you have my old chassis, and I ordered a motherboard, 32 gigs of RAM, and I'll put this up and running. And together with this horrible ThinkStation here that I have from work, they will make my triple database redundant setup and, two providers, two switches, two routers, two HA proxies, and basically a fully redundant setup except by the fact that, well, I have only one power source coming from the street here. So I work from here, and originally my girlfriend works from here. But she doesn't like to be behind me during my meetings, so I'm gonna move her desk here. I will see if I can fit the servers on that corner over there, or perhaps somewhere here next to my Mac Pro, and that should be it. I'm also going to replace the power supply. This power supply here hardly ever turns the fan on, like only more than 150 or 200 watts. So it's going to go to the NAS as I can, well, then replace the horrible improvised setup I have there. So let's get to it. So this is how it looks now, yeah? I have this fully passive power supply hanging on some sort of styrofoam, and the loud fans are just back there. They are... I don't see the size of the fans. These things are horrible. Like, why don't they print the size of the bloody fan there? Anyway, I'll replace those two tomorrow. So the server will go down again and it's gonna be kinda crappy setup to do. And another thing I'm gonna do I forgot to mention is here I will install another network card because I want to increase my security by not having any workstation connected to the same VLAN as the server, which means I will need a way to mount the shares. So there'll be interface server in the backup VLAN, and also I will spread the interfaces around the two switches for redundancy, so a 4-port NIC will go down here. As you can see, the power supply fits beautifully, with the bonus that I can use the fan as a sort of exhaust, so I will actually try to run this with the chassis cover, with only the power supply fan blowing the heat out and we will see how the system behaves. That could be a nice setup actually. And I already know that when this power supply is driving my VegaFix 64, the fan is barely audible, so let's see how it will go. I might still need to run these beasts here to throw air inside, but then I guess they can go through the CPU here and out through the power supply fan, instead of me having to run the loud exhaust fans. And I guess it may even get the same performance as I have now in terms of temperatures as with the Noctua that I have here, that you can see. And another challenge that I'm facing, I cannot find the high profile bracket for this card that I have. It's a 4-port Intel NIC, so I will actually leave the NIC situation as it is and just, or no, I lie, I'll install the 1-port NIC, because on the guest VLAN I probably do not need any sort of redundancy, and then I can set up a lag on the main service VLAN. Alright guys, took me 1 hour to figure out why my computer was not turning on, and it looks like, and I'm not sure if EVGA or here NightR are to blame, but I can't get the system on if I use the cables from the power cables from the NightR on the EVGA, so I had to rewire my whole server. Now we are perfectly good to go, and I will start moving everything to the office, but really, why? I spent some time troubleshooting and I couldn't figure out, and well, here is the reason. It really gets your troubleshooting skills back to the basics. Like I could not think that power cables will not work, and every time I try to connect the motherboard cable to without any peripherals, and it posted, but as soon as I used an ITR cable, even if it connected the hard disks, the system would not post. So a lesson learned here. So after a lot of work yesterday, my living room is completely out of electronics. The passive Yamaha speaker doesn't count as electronic. I hid all the cables on the plastic conduits that you see there. So there are no internet cables visible. I think it looks pretty good. Here you have my Unix corner. So my Octane is there with my C8000 underneath. The G5 is here, and on the other side you have my Mac Pro. The servers now stay here in the office, and the whole setup is ready to receive more server switches and routers for double redundancy. The problem is, I love the chassis, it's very well built, and I'm very happy that the company started making them in the UK instead of from China, which is always good for the economy. But the fans they use are very cheap, so this is impossibly loud. The final goal of the server is to be no noise, but with the spinning discs, as I mentioned before, we go over the thermal budget. So for this I got 2 Noctua fans to replace the 2 fans behind the hard drive cage. Now the problem here is the following. Not only the cables are very tight together, but the screws of the fan are coming from inside out, so I cannot change them from this side, and even if I could, there is no clearance between them and the heatsink for me to be able to change. So I need to remove all the cables from the cages, the discs from the cage from the front, and then disassemble the whole chassis to get through it. It's gonna be fun. After 1 year sitting on an open chassis, I have to say that the situation is pretty good. There is a small layer of small dust, but no dust bunnies anywhere. I think this is helped by the fact that the server sits very high close to the ceiling, so the big dust particles don't go up all the way there. The heatsink is also very clean, and I'm sure it's keeping its performance just fine. And this is how it looks from behind. The screws that I need to reach are back there, and 2 of them are underneath the fan, so it's gonna take some tactile prowess to reach there and remove them. To my surprise, on the bottom there are only 2 screws. The other 2 are not connected to the chassis. You see, they are connected straight to the board. So it's going to be very easy to replace them. There's a small layer of dust back here that I'll clean, but that should be it. Everything else is in a pretty good shape. And once I go fully passive, this dust is not going to accumulate here anymore. I've now replaced the first fan, and besides the fact that the threads were a bit too thick for the fan has 2 small threads for the screws, I managed to push it through fine and they sit flush. And I think this is good because it will avoid vibrations. I'll change the second one now, it is sitting here, and reinstall everything. Alright, for the moment of truth, let's power the server on and see what happens. Oh my god, the difference is incredible. I love this. Let's see if all discs are detected, and we should be good to go. Oh yes, all discs are here. Let's do a full boot and see what happens. In the meantime, check this out. What difference a good pair of fans make. They are blowing nicely, is a good amount of air, and it's completely quiet. It's not much louder than the hard drives, honestly, so until I have SSDs, this is going to be the way to go. And here you have a true NAS booting up. Alright, the server is up there, guys, and look, the difference in noise level is just incredible. This is beautiful, and when I'm in the living room from now on, I'm not going to be able to hear this whatsoever. Plus, working from here is going to be far more pleasant now. I guess that's it. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next time.